message is called Pump Up the Spiritual Muscle. So please give her a warm welcome.
So welcome Unity of Miami Gardens and welcome Unity on the Bay. We have two families together, more power for the service. And as we saw today, we're going to be going deeper into the power of strength, but it's not physical strength, it is spiritual strength. And according to Charles Fillmore, spiritual strength is the power to stand firm and steady fast in the face of any experience. So just as with physical strength, we don't acquire physical strength by sitting at home, watching TV all day. Physical strength requires us that we begin to push our body, to go to the gym, to go exercise, to get out of our comfort zone. So the same thing happens with spiritual strength. We're not going to be able to develop it if we become lazy and use all our free time to watch TV and do trivial things. So as we look for the co-founders of Unity, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, they became spiritual giants. They developed their spiritual strength. So in the early development of themselves, they became students of Emma Curtis Hopkins. She was the teacher of all teachers. And because both of them were faced with a lot of difficulties, Myrtle Fillmore was faced with the illness that she was given 3 months to live. And her husband, he was a real estate back in the days. He was a realtor, just like me. And I didn't know that, but back in the 1800s, there was this real estate market crash. I didn't even know that such a thing could happen. I guess neither did he. But what happened was he lost his ability to provide for his family, and he was just about to be evicted from his property. So the sheriff goes in to give him the eviction notice, to tell him that he had a few weeks over there, and he pleaded with the sheriff. He said that my father is abundant and he will be taking care of it. So please just give me a little bit more time and everything is going to be okay. What the sheriff didn't realize is that he was not talking about his physical father, he was talking about God. And guess what? Because he began to put his faith in God, because he was tested, because he began to use spiritual tools to overcome that difficulty, he became spiritually strong. So things doesn't happen overnight. And even if we look at the life of Jesus, he didn't become this master without doing anything about it. If you look at the books, Course in Miracles or The Way of Mastery, he's going to teach us some exercises. And as a matter of fact, he said that one of the differences between himself, Jesus, and most of us is that he had trained himself day after day, hour after hour, to hold on to only high vibrational thoughts. So he would entertain thoughts like, I and my Father are one. We are one and the same. When you see me, you see the Father who has sent me. I am the resurrection and the life. All power under heaven and earth has been given unto me. If you abide in my words and you let my word abide in you, you will ask what you need and it will be done unto you. So see, he trained himself to hold on to only these higher thoughts. And he said that most of us, we swing back and forth. We have this inspiring thought, we feel connected, we feel inspired, and then we swing back and we feel not good enough, not worthy, guilty. We feel like we are victimized by the circumstances of life, and then we swing over here and we begin to feel once again spiritually strong. So we swing back and forth, and Jesus said that he trained himself to be more on the side rather than swinging back and forth. Now, spiritual strength is different than physical strength. And most often than not, spiritual strength overtakes physical strength. And we can see an example of that when we look at the story of David and Goliath, for example. Goliath was this giant, this very strong man. He was fully armed. He had an armor, he had a helmet, he had the sword, he had the shield. And you have this little David was a teenage boy, not fully developed, not strong at all physically, was not wearing any armor, any helmet, any shield, and yet he had spiritual strength. He looked into Goliath and he said, before the day is over, the Lord will deliver you unto me. He was not leaning on his physical strength. He was leaning on his faith in God. That's spiritual strength. The same thing happened to Gandhi. If you look at the story of Gandhi, he did not free his people from the British domination by might, by fight, by efforting. It was a spiritual strength. Because if he tried to fight the British Empire with the weapons of this world, most likely than not, he would have been defeated. But he wasn't. He was able to set his people into freedom. Now, when we look at all those things, we say, oh my God, this is beautiful. I understand everything. But understanding everything and not putting into practice is not going to give you any result. If you look at principle number 5 from Unity Teachings, it says that knowledge is just step number 1. You have to begin to use these tools in your daily life in order to pump up that spiritual muscle and awaken the giant within you, just as the Fillmores did and just as Jesus did. So I'm going to talk about some things, like to make this practical, let's talk about some things that we can do in our daily lives that will help us pump up that spiritual muscle and become spiritually strong. First thing that we can do is one of the most important ones is to begin to bring awareness to what is it that's going on in your inner universe. And if you catch yourself going down the rabbit hole, how life is tough, how you're guilty, how you're not good enough, how you don't have the qualifications, you have to catch yourself and begin to choose consciously to release such thoughts. I love how Jesus used parables in scriptures to tell us what it's like, this higher state that we are all aspiring to be. And so those are the parables about the kingdom of heaven, which is nothing more than a specific state of being that we are all seeking to experience. So there is this parable called the parable of the net. So they said that this net was throwing out into the ocean, big net, and it began to collect all kinds of fishes. When the net was full, they pulled the net back into the shores, and the fishermen began to consciously pick the best of the best fishes, and then they gathered everything else and throw them back into the ocean. So what this parable is telling us is that our mind is able to collect all kinds of thoughts from the collective mind. Some thoughts are good, some thoughts are not so good. It's up to us to be like those fishermen and begin to consciously choose the ones that we want to hold and the ones that we want to let go. There was a time in my life in which I would get up in the morning and I begin to feel all kinds of stomach pain and cramps, and I'm like, what's wrong with me? And I begin to realize that during the night, when I was sleeping, I had no pain. As soon as I get up in the morning, pain, pain, pain. So I decided to pay attention, what kind of thoughts am I having when I open up my eyes? And I realized that I had the bad habit of having the thoughts, what could go wrong today, and what can I do about it? So I had the bad habit of focusing on what could go wrong, and that would cause me a great level of anxiety. Once I begin to notice that my own way of thinking was beginning to have that impact in me, I begin to consciously choose to begin to change. Now, very often, I do that because it makes me feel good. As soon as I open up my eye in the morning, I begin to contemplate what is right in my life and how can I show some appreciation. So I start off with being appreciative for the fact that I'm sleeping on a cozy bed and it's protected by the environment, and it can rain and it can be cold and I'm protected. I begin to show appreciation for the people that are surrounding me, for my house, for my friends, for my companion, for the pets. Begin to show appreciation for the fact that there's food in the refrigerator, that there's warm water in the bathroom. Very easy to do, but what we do is we are programming our mind right from the start to begin to focus on what's right with my life and how can I continue to move in that direction. And when we do that, we are pumping up that spiritual muscle and training our mind to go in a specific direction. See, our mind are like horses. You could be a trained horse or you could be a wild horse. A trained horse, right? If you go go for a ride with the wild horse, you say go right, the horse goes left. You say go straight, the horse stops. Right? But if that horse is trained, you can tell that go forward, and the horse will go forward. So our mind is the same way. It needs to be trained, because if we are a victim of our own way of thinking, we will become a victim of the world outside of yourselves, because it is but a reflection. So whenever you begin to rein in that horse, you're pumping up that spiritual muscle. Another practice that is important is the practice of forgiveness. And I know sometimes it's hard to forgive, especially if you feel like somebody did you wrong and you have that tendency to think how the other person is wrong, how you are right, how you're going to set the record straight next time, how you wish them to pay off for whatever it is that they are doing unto you. But here's the invitation. If you want to pump up that spiritual muscle, practice not taking it personally. Realize that that person may be in a very bad place to begin with, so you can begin to wish them well. Wish that there is light in their heart so they stop doing that to you and to anyone else. If you look at the life of Jesus when he was on the cross, if he was there thinking, God, this is unfair. I have been such a good, loving teacher. I raised the dead, I healed the sick, I fed the multitudes, and yet they are betraying me, they're torturing me, they're going to put me to death. This is not fair, God, come on, do something about it. If he was holding on to that state when he was in the cross, most likely than not, he will not be able to experience the resurrection and the ascension, because he kept himself clear and he said, God, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. I hold no ill feelings towards them. He was keeping himself elevated. He was pumping up his spiritual muscle. See, being resented is like taking a poison and hoping that the other person get hurt. They're not going to get hurt. You are the one that is going to get hurt. So whenever you are able to forgive someone, pat yourself in the back. That's a little victory there. See, the thing is to begin to accumulate little victories and build up that muscle anyway. Another important practice is the practice of inner stillness. See, there is a lot of wisdom, there is a lot of guidance, there is a lot of good things within ourselves. But when the monkey mind is extremely active, it takes us away from the perception of that connection that we can have. You see, through the story of Jesus, he said that the strength that he has didn't belong to them. As a matter of fact, he says, of my own self I am nothing, of my own self I can do nothing. The Father within me doeth the works. So spiritual strength is not a personal strength, it's a strength that is gained through that connection. So we need to prepare the soil to be able to have some measure of connection. And sometimes, being still is hard, but you can use your daily activities, such as cleaning the house or washing your car or doing something, as an active meditation. You make the commitment to be so present to the action that you begin to practice calming down the monkey mind. Another thing that we can do, if you look at the book A Course in Miracles, there is an exercise that they invite you to do that is like this. You make the commitment to choose above all things the peace of the present moment. Somebody went in and pushed your button, you take a deep breath. I choose the peace of the present moment. And this is what happens. There is such a thing as a spiritual peace in the present moment that is available to each one of us. This spiritual peace is so powerful that when you learn the art to look for it and practice living and moving and having your being in the awareness of this peace, it begins to permeate everything around you, and it begins to go before you to prepare the ways. So every time you choose peace above drama, peace above conflict, peace above fear, you're building up that spiritual muscle once again. Now, if you want to take the practice to the next level, there is an exercise in the book, The Way of Mastery, that is a 5-minute exercise. I know my friends who study with me The Way of Mastery know what I'm talking about. And the practice is this. If you want to take the spiritual muscle to the next level, practice for 5 minutes every day to sit and contemplate as if you are the Christ. And you're probably thinking, Angela, come on, that's hard. I don't know what's like being the Christ. Who am I to be able to do that? That's way too hard. So I'd like to remind you that Christ is your true nature. We have identified ourselves with the physical body, with the personality, with the thoughts, but we begin to sit in contemplation of what it's like to be able to live without fear. What it's like to feel that I am already worthy of the good things of life. What it's like to be comfortable with the uncertainties of life, knowing full well that the universe has my back. When you begin to contemplate things like that, you actually expedite the process of awakening the giant within yourself. Now, some people may think that, I have so many problems to take care of. I don't have time to build up spiritual muscle. I don't have time to do spiritual practice. I got to first take care of my problems, my situations, my job, and then I'm going to find free time to go into the spiritual gym and build up some spiritual muscle. But the opposite is true. If you're facing a difficulty, the best thing that you can do is double down on your spiritual practices and see what it does to your problems. There was a time in my life in which I was also a realtor back in 2008, when the real estate market began to crash. And I find myself in the same position as Charles Fillmore. I was no longer able to provide enough money for the bills. And I begin to hold on to those worst case scenario thoughts. What if I get foreclosed in the house and I get evicted? And back in those days, I used to have 5 pets, 3 dogs and 2 cats. And you probably think, Angela, what are you doing, 5 pets? Are you crazy? I probably was, but it's not the point. But my fear was there. What if I get evicted? Where am I going to go with 5 pets? I even thought if I have to go back to Brazil, my mother's not going to accept my 5 pets, so I have to get rid of them. So I remember having the thought of having to take them to the Humane Society. And for those of you who have pets, they feel like your little kids. So the image of me going to the Humane Society with my pets just broke my heart. And I said, no, I can't allow that to happen. I got to do something about it. So I went and started praying to God. I said, God, all I want, all I need is like this solid rock that I can stand on, and I can weather these waves pushing me around, and I can stand still. Could you just help me? All I need is this solid rock. And when I did that prayer, I was hoping for like a business opportunity or perhaps winning the lottery. I was thinking about things out there. But the answer that I got back was that the solid rock that you're looking for has to be found within yourself first. And that's when I realized, okay, so I made the decision because my back was up against the wall and I was in panic mode. I made the commitment that I was going to go deeper into the studies of metaphysics and mysticism. So I started reading 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at night. I got into the books of Joel Goldsmith, Eric Butterworth, Emily Cady, Neil Donald Walsh, on and on. I dove into those books for a couple of hours a day. And what I noticed is it began to brainwash myself away from thoughts of fear, and he began to introduce to me new ideas that completely changed the course of my life. Eventually, I was led into a new business opportunity, but the key was brainwashing the mind away from limiting thoughts to thoughts that are more inspiring and uplifting. So the invitation here is, if you're facing difficulty in your life, don't say, and I'm going to fix the problem, and then I'm going to take care of, my spiritual muscle. No, double down on your spiritual muscle. There is something here at Unity that we learn. It's called the golden key. Anybody knows about the golden key? I've shared before. Golden key? All right, golden key is this. You feel faced with the problem. Instead of focusing on the problem, focus on God instead and see what change that could happen in your life. So to bring this message to a conclusion, if you get a recipe in a book and you read and the recipe looks so amazing, but you never go out and you never get the ingredients and you never cook, you're not going to be able to experience of it. See, you don't need to go to an ashram to build your spiritual muscles. You don't even need to go to church every Sunday. You can use your life just as it is, as the perfect ashram to put into practice, especially when you're triggered, especially when you're being pushed around. You can practice being aware of your thoughts. You can practice forgiveness. You can practice beginning your day looking for what's right with you so that you can show some measure of appreciation. You can begin to use your daily routine as an active meditation to quiet the monkey mind so that you can begin to listen to the still small voice within you. And last but not least, you can begin to contemplate what it's like to be a spiritual giant, like the Fillmore. And when you do, just like Jesus did, you will be able to look at the storms of life and say, peace be still, and behold the storms dissolving before you. Thank you very much.